Well, good afternoon or good day to everyone. So I'm Shanti Chitta. I think most of you know me. I'm introducing this afternoon's exercise. I'm getting mixed up with time here. So what we're going to do this afternoon is an exercise by Joanna Macy called Harvesting the Gifts of the Ancestors. And some of you may have done this. I've done this a few times, but I've never done it on Zoom, so I'm not quite sure how it'll work, but hopefully it'll be fine. So this is an exercise where we go back in time, right to the beginning of humanity in our imagination. And then we come forward again in time, and on the way, on our journey forward through time, we harvest the gifts that our ancestors have given us over the years. So this afternoon, I'm actually in Brighton Buddhist Centre, so it's a hybrid event. So I've got a group of people here in the room taking part in the exercise, as well as all you in your homes also taking part. So if you can choose, you can do this from sitting in a chair, or you can physically get up and walk. And the first part of the exercise, I get everybody to walk very slowly backwards to give the experience of walking back through time. So if you've got space where you are and would like to do this, feel free to stand up and prepare yourself to walk very slowly backwards in a circle, so anti-clockwise. But if you'd rather just stay seated in the chair, that's fine. Whatever feels comfortable for you. So if you'd like to sort of get into your positions, whether in a chair or you could even lie down, or whether you're walking. And we're going to have some drumming accompaniment just to create an atmosphere, which I hope will work. So is everyone ready? We'll start walking backwards anti-clockwise. Keep your eyes sort of half open so that you don't bump into anyone. If you all go in a circle, that's the easiest. So from this present moment, on the 21st of April, 2022, wherever you are in the world, or whichever time zone you're in, begin to slowly walk backwards in time. Move back through the events of today, back to eating your breakfast, and back to where you're waking up in bed and climbing out of bed. And then slowly walk back through yesterday and the days of this retreat that you've been on, the sessions you've experienced. Walk back through the last week with the explorations of the Dharma and the climate and ecological emergency. Keep walking back slowly from April into March. Walk back through the last month of March, the days of your life, going to work or going to a local Buddhist centre, teaching a meditation class or attending a class. Walk back through the months, back into the winter, from March to February, and the beginning of the year. Take yourself back to January, maybe New Year celebrations. And then as you pass through January, step back into 2021. Continue walking through the times at home or in your community or wherever you live. Continue walking through the times at work or on retreat or in your wider community. Walk back through the lockdowns, the pandemic, the anxiety about catching COVID that you might have experienced or even having caught it. Walk back through 2021 with all the difficulties the pandemic has thrown at us. Walk back through the seasons and encounters, through the autumn of 21 to the summer. Walk back through the holidays you might have taken, or the retreats you might have been on. Back from 2021 to 2020, making your way through the pandemic, the fear that you may have felt, maybe the death of someone that you loved or cared for. Back to the beginning of 2020, when the pandemics first hit the world, spreading from China to Italy, to Europe, to America, and the Americas, on to the Africas, New Zealand and Australia. And now we start to move more quickly through the years, back to 2019, back into the decades of your adult life. Many decades for some and fewer for others. Walk back through the journeys you made, the places in which you have lived, the work you've carried out, the retreats you may have been on. Witness perhaps the death of someone close to you, or perhaps the birth of a child, or of children, the relationships you have had, your first contact with the Dharma. Encounter again the emotional turmoils of your youth, the passions and disappointments, the achievements and accomplishments. Walk back into your teenage years with all the hopes, expectations, and angst. Back through the anguish and turmoil of adolescence. You are now entering childhood, seeing the places and faces you knew, the lessons at school, homework and exams. Maybe you were sent away to boarding school, the lonely times, the fun times, homesickness. Your body is getting smaller and smaller. And you now have to reach up to hold the grown-up's hands. And now you're so small, you have to be carried in the arms or a sling of your mother or caregiver or father. You are shrinking, smaller and smaller. And now you're inside your mother's body. You can hear the beat of her heart. Your body is simplifying, fewer and fewer cells, until you're just one cell, and you've reached the moment of your conception. Yet the life that is in you did not begin with your conception. It was there with your mother and your father. Even if you did not know your birth mother or your birth father, you can step back into their lives now. So stepping back into the lives of your birth parents, walk back now through their young adulthood. The choices they faced, the dreams they held. Move back with them into their adolescence, their childhood, their infancy, maybe remembering the tales you have been told about their lives. Continue walking back into the lives of your grandparents and your great-grandparents. Back from the 21st century to the 20th and beyond. Moving back now before modern technology, mobile phones and computers, cars, electricity, all the modern things we take for granted. Move in the shadows of gas lamps and oil lamps. Move into the lives of your ancestors, whose names you no longer know. But a gesture of theirs, an expression, a smile lives on in you. Move back along the river of life. Back through the Industrial Revolution. The beginning of rising CO2 levels. Back through the dark factories and crowded city streets. back into the lives of your people. The generations move more quickly as you walk back through the centuries. Back beyond the Victorian age, the 1800s, 1700s. Back through wars and upheavals, and the steady rhythm of the seasons, the tilling of the earth. You're walking back through ancestors' lives as peasants, as magistrates, scholars, artisans, thieves, beggars, feudal lords and serfs, slaves and slaveholders. Generals and foot soldiers. Even then they carried you within them like a seed. You're moving back through ancient empires. The rich time of many religious teachers and prophets. The time of the Buddha in northern India. Back through the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Back through the mists of time. You come now to the longest chapter of our human journey, when we moved in small groups across the planet as hunter-gatherers, collecting what we could and no more than we needed. Keep walking back through the millennia, when we were nomads, treading with each footstep the soil and rock, the deserts and forests of this earth, our home. Keep walking back to the beginning. Back some 40,000 generations ago. Can you remember? Was it in the heartland of Africa? And now you stop. Now, with the very first ones, you're standing at the edge of the forest, looking out over the savannah. The journey of your people lies ahead. You and your kin don't have the strength and speed, nor tusks, teeth, or claws, nor thick fur coats to protect from the cold, nor adaptations to protect from heat. You're naked, standing there in the savannah. All you have is each other and your voices to call with. You cannot imagine what your journey together will bring, or what challenges you will face. And now, start walking forward together on that journey now. And as you walk forward, you can use your arms and gestures to gather the gifts on the way. Enter the long trek of your ancestors across the continents, their voyages on rafts, the long struggles in the ages of ice. You come from an unbroken line of survivors, and each has gifts to bestow. Open your arms and hands to receive these gifts. Gather them in. Take their physical endurance. Take gifts of the one with the courage to lead, sending out scouts, selecting the way to go. Keep an eye on the children, the elderly, those heavily pregnant, keeping the group together. Take the gift of the storytellers sitting around the fire at night. Those who studied the stars, so bright and mysterious. Walking with these ancestors, harvest their keen senses, their observant eyes, their ability to gather leaves and roots for fever and childbirth. Harvest the knowledge of the healers and midwives. Harvest the wild knowing of the shaman, who dances between realities, between seen and unseen worlds. Harvest the beating of the drum, the chants as we buried the dead and welcomed the newborn. Walking up through the centuries, see the trust in the eyes of the children, the passion in the eyes of the young. See the wisdom in the eyes of the elderly. hear the laughter of two young girls splashing in a stream. Harvest our kinship with the other animals, watching and learning their ways. Our teachers, our totems. Receive the ingenuity of your ancestors, making tools, weaving cloth, fashioning homes. Know their love of beauty. Music of a flute coming from the hills, and the sound of beating drums. Hands carving jewelry, feet dancing on the packed earth. We are entering the time when we start to settle down, sowing seeds and returning to harvest. Then staying to cultivate, perhaps at the confluence of two rivers. Ploughing the land with maybe oxen or horses. And we begin to grow surplus, and our numbers increase. Our settlements expand. We build granaries and temples. Some of us own land, building walls to demarcate our fields. And some of us are landless, selling our labor to feed our children. Walk with the ancestors who devote their lives to trade. Travelling great distances over land, by caravans or by sea, sailing ships. Some of these traders would have reached Asia, And around these times, the Buddha would have been wandering around northern India with his followers and monks, teaching the Dharma. Some of your ancestors may have encountered him. Listen to him teach. We are moving now into recorded history. Cities are growing with institutions of government and ecclesiastical power and imperial power. Empires with vast territories and vast armies, with some of your ancestors in command, some as foot soldiers, men who know the fear of blood and battle. And people come to be owned as well as the land. Some of our ancestors are slaves, and others are slave owners. All have gifts for you to harvest. Gifts of endurance, gifts of responsibility, gifts of sorrow. Among your ancestors are those who fight for dignity and human rights, for food, harvest the gifts of the ancestors who sing songs of freedom and fight for justice. Walk with the ancestors who stay on the land, tilling the fields, generation after generation, intimate with the earth and the seasons. Times of plenty and times of growth, as well as times of lack, of famine. Harvest their gifts. Moving on through time, walk with the ancestors caught up in crusades, inquisitions, and witch burning. They too have gifts for you, gifts of how greed and fear can warp the mind, gifts of steadfast faith. You have ancestors of great exploration, leaving familiar worlds to seek new lands, for wealth or religious freedom. These ancestors have gifts for you. Take their courage and determination. Take the bitter gifts too, of sorrow and fortitude. Harvest as well the wisdom of the indigenous people of these lands. Take their deep knowledge of forests, plains, rivers, of the whole interconnected biodiversity, their knowledge of governance, their knowledge of the local animals that inhabit the lands, the plants for medicines. Now walk with your ancestors into the Industrial Revolution. Cotton gin, steam engine, railways. Ancestors whose highland farms and grazing lands are taken, migrating into the cities, the factories, mills and mines. Some are children working dawn to dusk. The noise and teeming people walking the city streets, going to work in the factories. Harvest the gifts of those who speak out for a fair wage and the right to organise. You are stepping now into the lives of ancestors whose names you may know. Move with them into the 20th century. The 20th century with its world wars and breakthroughs of technology. Planes, cars, computers. A century of bitter fruit. The splitting of the atom, death camps, nuclear bombs, refugee camps, the mass migration of people, nuclear power and proliferation of weapons. And some of your kin sent to the death camps, and others in charge of them. But they all have gifts for you. If only terrible pain and sorrow, and the plea to be remembered. And we move on, walking into the middle of the 20th century or later. Now step into the radiance of the child who is you, greeting the world afresh. Walk through that experience of discovering the world. Those years as a small toddler and the first days at school. The anxieties and the joys that you felt. Learning how to read and write. Step into your teenage years, with schoolwork and exams, with their dreams and betrayals, disappointments, excitement. Walk into the beckoning world. And now through the adult years, through the choices you have made, the people you have met and loved, the tasks you gave yourself to do. Remember your first contact with the Dharma, however that might have been. Reading a book, attending a meditation class, or a yoga class. Remember your journey into Triratna. Harvest the gifts from those great teachers. Sangharakshita and his teachers, all part of a lineage stretching back to the Buddha, each passing on the most precious gift of all, the Dharma. Take the anguish as you opened your eyes to the suffering of the world, the political chaos, war making, terrorism, refugee crises, climate chaos, extinction of species. You are now stepping into this last year, moving towards the end of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. Harvest the gifts of the last year and the last few months. Maybe harvest the gifts that you may have found on this retreat. You are stepping now into the last week. Absorbing the gifts that you have gathered on your way. Absorbing the gifts that you may have received this week. And now we come to Thursday, the 21st of April. You enter this present moment and stop. Here now, going no further than your next breath, it's hard to imagine what lies ahead and what will be asked of you or your people. But you know one thing, you do not go empty-handed. You go with the gifts of the ancestors and the gift of our deepening practice of the Dharma together. So now we're back in the present moment, back in your rooms at home, your centres, wherever you may be. And I wondered whether you might like to form breakout groups to absorb and discuss how you each experienced it. We'll go into groups for 15 minutes and share with each other your experiences of that exercise. Welcome back, everyone. So I wonder if you'd like to share some of your experiences in the chat. Anything you'd like to share from your groups or from your experience of doing the exercise? Whether you enjoyed it or hated it or whatever. There were quite a few. Carmen says it was amazing, thank you. Christine says many thanks to the drummer. The drummer is Andy, he's sitting here. There's Andy. Very powerful, Claudia. Anyone else? There are the people in the, I've got people sitting here in the room, whether they'd like to contribute. Did help. Helen said she found it very moving and found the drumming really helpful. Marcela says life enhancing and enriching, thanks.
sense of the flow and survival of humanity, and yeah.
Jackie says she experienced the flow and survival of humanity through the exercise.
There's sort of a sense of deep time going back so far, and how humanity, our ancestors, have struggled is the word that comes to mind, but I mean, lived through so much, done so much, sort of tilled the ground in all senses of the word, and we now live on that, and how we have a debt. We owe them. We can't forget, the blood and sweat and tears that have gone into keeping humanity alive.
Liz says it was like travelling in deep time, and you really get a feel of how much humanity has been through over the centuries, and the blood and sweat and tears that have been shed. Chrissy says it was a very powerful exercise and brought lots of thoughts and a very interesting conversation in our breakout room about impermanence and ethics in relation to the climate crisis. The drumming was very helpful too. And Abaya Natri says, not always easy, but I'm here with a sense of gratitude for compassion and connection I experience for living now and still to come. And Christine says, I took strength and support from their determination to survive and their commitment to their family and community. Yes, you really get a feel of how hard life must have been over the centuries. And I think that's very striking at the beginning. Joanna Macy put in that we come from a whole legacy of survivors. It's quite a strong, powerful statement. And Alyssa says, awareness that we're always on an adventure, amazement on the fact that we always take decisions for our direction. Yeah, it is interesting, sort of life is unknown, and yet when you look back at all the different decisions and paths that have been taken, life is an adventure. Carmen says it was great to remember that we as humanity have a shared history, a shared karma. I was shaken when you said that we come from an unbroken line of survivors. Yeah, I think it's a powerful statement. It sort of makes you realise, we've come all this way. Our ancestors have come all this way, and we are the end result.
I love the image of the girls laughing by the river.
Yeah.
That really stirred me.
Yeah.
Something that we need to move towards.
Eric says, I realise the continuity of Indigenous peoples, the continuity of their knowledge, when we have lost that knowledge. It's true, there's a lot has been lost. Okay, someone else? Susan says, I wondered which of my ancestors was also a midwife. They say we're all related to each other. If we go back far enough, we'll find that we're all quite closely related. And people in Europe are meant to have come from Mother Europa, who's the first person to migrate from Africa to Europe. And there must be similar people for the other continents, which is fascinating. It's nearly 10 to 5. You know, whether you'd like to just sit for a few minutes just to absorb the afternoon. So we'll just get yourself comfortable, and we'll just sit for about just under 10 minutes. You don't have to do anything, just sit and allow the experiences to flow through you. Just absorb what's happened, like watching clouds drifting across the sky. Well, thank you everyone, especially for attending on such a lovely sunny afternoon. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but it's absolutely beautiful here. So thank you.